Oh, it was shorter than 5 seconds to stand by. What is shaking, y'all? Episode, look at this.
Oh, it was shorter than
198. Oh my gosh, I hear myself coming through. Episode 198, Golden Mike Live. Listen up. If you've been doing 2019 in terms of your branding, following fads, taking these courses that tell you what you need to do stepwise, you're probably already doing something antiquated and you're totally missing maybe a piece to demonstrate your strengths and your authenticity, which is why for this 98th episode, 198 episodes. Do you know why we've had 198 episodes, Neuman?
Why is that, Mark?
Because you can't cancel me, Neuman! Neuman, you've been on my show 3 times and you haven't been able to cancel me.
I have not. No.
It's a branding strategy that I've taken that is I'm not getting rid of 2020. I'm so proud to talk to our guest today. I would say we've become friends over this process, Tiffany.
Yeah, it's been a long journey, but not really, if you look back.
I love how your eyes dart both up and to the left and up and to the right. You're both thinking and partially messing with me, but it's been a fun journey. Tiffany, for those of you who have not met her, total brainiac and professor, and worked with corporate for 15 years. I'm talking about places like FedEx, Stoli, drink of choice for the Golden Mike, Burts, bees, people, right? And then when it comes to entrepreneurs, she's worked with everyone from Selena Soo to Reich, some clients of mine who've gone to her and have these fantastic ideas. Tiffany Neuman. Tiffany, it's like the 5th time you've been on the show or something. So
keep coming back.
You've passed Walter Aguilar and Zach Messler as the top guest now. So it's good to have you back. We're talking about these trends today. So I think we can stick around, and I want to hear the trends, definitely. Shelly, do you want to hear the trends? Let me know. So for the last 2 times in the 100 episodes, I'm Mark Cordone. I'm a positive psychologist, founder of the Joy Revolution, and on a regular basis, sound familiar, Tiff? On a regular basis, I get to ask people like Tiffany 2 simple questions, and it relates totally to positive psychology. How happy are you today? And how much are you living in your purpose? Tiffany Neuman.
Yes.
How happy are you today?
I am ecstatic today.
Ecstatic is
happy.
Look at it. She's using 25-cent words on the show already. She's ecstatic. That's good to hear. And in your purpose, talk about that.
Yeah, so definitely living my purpose. I think this year and moving into 2020 is the year of purpose, and that's part of the trends I'll be talking about is how can you live into your purpose and show up as you truly are on purpose online, serving people that you want to serve. And it's a journey, right? Like I think if you asked me a year ago, if we look back at our last conversation, I would have said this, I'm living in the journey, but I think being intentional about that, you can always live into it even more. So
it's awesome how sort of the dynamics change when it comes to purpose. And especially when you start leaning into the purpose, like the bullseye starts widening or it starts shifting over. It's an amazing thing. It's not a one rooted thing and you stay there forever. That's not the purpose that we're talking about.
Absolutely.
So for those of you, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's the last 2 times I'm going to say it in the hundreds. For those of you who are feeling happy and living in your full purpose, I want you to make a heart and hit that heart button. Neuman, you sprite, you David Bowie of branding. Do you guys see it in her? She's David Bowie of branding.
Okay, I guess I'll take it.
Hit that heart. Let us know you're live, people. Let us know. Now, here's the other thing. Those of you who are like listening right now and you're like, oh my gosh, Cordone, Neuman, it's the holidays. I am not happy right now. I'm not feeling it. I didn't get a good night's rest. Or you're saying, you know what, like I'm looking at the past decade, 2010 to 2020, and I've fallen out of my purpose. I need to do something in the next 10 years. I really feel like I've been settling. That is fine. That's part of your journey. We've all been through it, and Neuman might bring it up herself. It also makes for good branding when you talk about the fact that you're a fucking human. So like, to be able to understand those ups and downs and all arounds and move through them and with them, I call that your joy capacity. And as your joy capacity increases, your ability to serve with purpose increases as well. If you're not totally there yet, that's cool. Your heart beats just like Neuman and I. Give us a thumbs up. Let us know that you're living the dream. Let us know that you're present, because one day in the 200 episodes, you're probably going to be on here telling your story. All right. So here's the last one. A lot of people think that positive psychology and hope is about 24/7 happiness, right? Tiffany on her flying motorcycle, going and throwing branding skittles across the sky, happy 24/7 with her kids and her husband. No, it's not like that. Life is really about the ups and the downs and the all arounds, and about hope. Hope from the standpoint, if you can vision your future and then start taking marching orders towards that future, that's the hope that we're talking about. I bet that works in branding as well, visioning and all that stuff, and then marching towards it.
Absolutely, that's the first step, yes.
Right. That's called hope theory in positive psych. And hope theory has been found to be as effective as IQ and EQ. So if you're down with the hope theory, like Neuman and Cordone is, I want you to hit another button down there. It's called the wow face. And for the record, 5th time, Neuman is going to make the wow face with me. Let's do it, Neuman.
What's the wow face?
Oh my God, how many times you got to be on this show to get the wow face down?
I remember the heart. I didn't remember the wow face.
It's all good. It's been that long. It's been that long. But I have to share some excitement with you, Neuman.
All right.
John Frusciante is back with the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Nice.
We're going to have a good decade. The original guitarist for the Chili Peppers is back. That's
long term. I have not heard that.
Yeah, and if you remember our first episode, we played Chili Peppers.
We did, and he's from Michigan, which I am from too, so there we go.
It's an amazing world, amazing world. So I've asked you this like 5 times, what your story is, and it's always the opening question that I throw out to the guest. But I want you to answer it in a different way today. Like, what has been your story over the past couple years that's been leading up to identifying some of these branding trends that it's time to take them out to pasture? Like,
yeah.
What has been your story?
Oh, that's a good one. Way to put me on the spot, Cordone. Change it up on me. No. I guess it all started, like, say 5 years, right? So being in corporate, doing what I do. So I would work on branding trends in corporate as a creative director for Fortune 500s. That was a lot of what I did, was what's next, because a lot of these brands, like you mentioned earlier, are already founded, they're already rooted, they already have a foundation. So we were just change it up on me. No, very much pushing. I guess forward. It all started. Oh, I'm hearing an echo. Like, say 5 years, right? Yeah, so being in corporate, doing what I do. So I would work on branding trends in corporate.
Same problems.
Hey, it happens. So yeah, that's really where it was. Then it shifted. Like you said, I have kids, traveling a lot, which I still travel, but I wanted to get out of corporate and really I started working with space companies, virtual reality companies, startups. And I thought that was my niche. Then I met people called entrepreneurs, and I joined a mastermind, and I realized, oh, these are my people. So I let go of the startups, really focused on entrepreneurs, and then realizing as an entrepreneur how much correlation there is to the big brands that entrepreneurs are not using in their businesses to get ahead. but then also what's different for entrepreneurs from the big brands, right? So there's a lot of common threads, but then there's also a lot of things that are very different. So that's really where I've been in the last few years, is working with entrepreneurs and finding that sweet spot of what really helps them step ahead, stand out from the crowd online, because it is getting more and more crowded, as we know.
Yeah.
And then also really embodying some of the things that are tried and true for the big brands that will never leave and will always be a good piece of the foundation of a solid brand.
So talk about the sweet spot and how you came about finding that sweet spot. And you yourself are an entrepreneur. And so how did you find that sweet spot?
Yeah. So the sweet spot really is, I mean, like Venn diagrams are my favorite example of everything. I use that for all different types of examples. So if you think of like the big brands, like Coca-Cola, Burts, Stoli, Vodka, McDonald's, even brands that I don't really like, Fiji, all of the big brands, Tom's Shoes, a lot of those amazing brands that are out there killing it. And then you have, entrepreneurial brands. Well, what is the sweet spot for the same people like Marie Forleo, Tony Robbins, Oprah? I mean, she's an entrepreneur, but like high level, obviously, at this point. Those people that you admire online, what is that commonality? What is that sweet spot in the middle? And that all comes down to, the main thing is consistency, right? Great branding is not super sexy. A lot of people will try and like throw spaghetti at the wall and try new things to get attention, to be out there. But really what it comes down to is being consistent, taking a stand and sticking with it. So like you don't see Coca-Cola like one day, oh, we're going to use blue for our main brand color, or we're going to change the story. They do evolve over time. So Coca-Cola obviously was all about, the product. Now they're being about more being social conscious, because their product is kind of getting a lot of grief, and they're moving into different brands and different offerings, which entrepreneurs tend to do too. Mm-hmm. But they have that common thread, that consistency that carries them throughout that evolution.
So let's start from step one, because I see a couple people online right now, and I know you guys are coaches that are watching. Some of you, let's use hi coaches. Let's go right to the idea of just branding itself. What is a simple definition for branding? Because I've heard a million different things. I myself have a working definition for it, but what is your working definition for it?
Yeah, so for me, it's really the way that you show up in the world and the way that people perceive you. So it's not what you think you're showing up as. One of the common quotes is, it's how people talk about you when you're not in the room, right?
Yep.
So it's not only the visual manifestation, which a lot of people think of, oh, it's your logo, your colors, your fonts. Right. It's very much the messaging behind it, your story, and how that's all woven together, how you show up in the world, and then how you're being perceived in the world.
Okay, gotcha. And let's go right into it. Let's go right into some of these trends that have been happening that maybe it's time for us to leave behind. Like, what are the ones that you've started identifying?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different trends. There's a lot of visual trends and then also marketing trends. So I'll kind of stick with what people consider branding usually is the visual pieces, right? So some of those are just following the leader, following trends. So you'll see of a lot of people kind of that, I'm not calling out this brand in particular, but the reason it's so popular is that the Boss Babe brand did so well branding themselves that a lot of, especially female coaches, followed that trend. So you see a lot of the like light pink, same quotes. So it's kind of that same dress, different girl, right?
Right.
And a lot of people who are newer in the space follow what leaders are doing because it's working. So why not follow that? But the problem is then you see this splash of people that all look consistent and the same online, and you can't tell one from the other. So I'm not calling them out as a brand. It's actually, they did a good job in it, but that's one thing also. I also talk about that, like the whole bro marketing. So it's the opposite in the male space, like showing up with your cool pictures and just like these poses. And that's not who you are. That's posed pictures, and it's not authentic, right? I'm just going to say, call it out. It is what it is.
Absolutely.
And then there's other.
The thing is for the company itself, I've always taken it as a sort of a I must be do. It's not that I must be doing right because it's not necessarily validation, but like over 200 episodes, I've started to see some people doing very similar things, sort of same attitude, same copy, and I take it as a compliment when people start doing that. But just like when I started, I was mimicking other people. I was mimicking what other people successfully were doing, and I was kind of afraid to express myself. I felt like it was like this. My first year of starting my company was I was singing karaoke songs. And like I needed to sit into developing my song style,
originals.
I needed to know my range, and just writing about what I felt was important. And I feel like that's the same thing. It's sort of this mimicry in marketing.
Yeah, and
branding.
It's okay when you're starting out because you really do need to find your sweet spot and who you're serving and what your unique mechanism is that sets you apart.
Yeah.
So that's great that you shared that because it's not like it's a bad thing, especially starting out.
No, and I mean, it happens in nature as well. Like, the creatures mimic each other, and then to adapt, they will go and they will evolve a specialized tail or something like that. And it puts them at an advantage of the creatures that they used to mimic before. But it won't be, in the long run, very good for you.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, cool. So the first thing is this idea of mimicry. It's time to get out of mimicry. Now, Tiff, if someone's sitting here watching and saying, okay, like, if I have, like, I'm a high, was it right brain? Left brain is creative, so it's right brain. Like, I'm a right brain person. Like, I almost need to be told what to do because, like, there's so many different options out there for me. How do you go about not mimicking? Like, it seems like you go to you have to turn inward or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I really look at branding as a self-development process. So you have to go inward and really bring out what that is. It's a matter of, sitting with it, asking specific questions. Also, researching and finding, if you've been working with clients, asking them too, asking people around you, because often one of my favorite sayings, which you've heard me say a million times, is you cannot see the label within the bottle. No. And so you need other people's perspectives, and it's how you're being perceived. Oftentimes we don't, and that stands for me too. You don't realize how you're showing up because you're in your own head, or what your unique mechanism is, what your unique pieces. You might think it's one thing and it's something completely different that you're bringing to the table that really sets you apart from, for instance, all the other coaches out there,
Yeah, I actually call that your golden shadow, right? It's the part of yourselves that like everyone can see is unique and cool and different, but you can't see it in yourself yet. It's You're blind to it. It's a blind spot. How did you get through, like, recognizing your golden shadow when you were developing your brand for your company?
Yeah, so it was very much an evolution, just like I take my clients through. I can see it for them very intuitively, but for myself, it was actually really difficult because I came from corporate, so I had that corporate and the professor ingrained in me. Yeah. So it was really hard to release that and to show up, a little more casual and inviting online. My corporate speak just comes out, and so, but that's not who I am as a person. It's just ingrained in me. So kind of like releasing some of that, letting that go, and then going through the iterations, going through the process. So I have a very unique method and program of doing branding, and that was an evolution. And through that evolution, it was really just listening to my clients telling me like what really stood out for them. So I would do follow-up sessions and say, okay, like what really stood out to you? And I think it's, realizing that I have a specific intuition around the branding piece, combined with the strategy, combined to just really listening to people, as silly as that sounds. I think the best things we as entrepreneurs can do is listen to our clients like very deeply, because then you're able to, mirror that back to them, if that makes sense. So
absolutely.
It was very much a progression.
A very validating process for some people. Like, or even like like people feeling a sense of freedom, like, oh, I don't have to go about it that way, or like, oh, I can actually use this part of my identity in my brand.
Yes. And that's the thing, is to pull out your quirks, to pull out the things that you maybe feel like you want to hide. It really helps people get to know you, the real you, because so many people online have a facade and they're not being real. And if you're being genuine, it's very, very obvious. And so if you can show up and highlight that and be real in a strategic way, that's the best of both worlds.
And I think I like the idea of in a strategic way, because vulnerability has definitely become like something that's big, right? People sharing, but then also at the same time, at what cost of sharing and putting your stuff out there, you know? Shelley Brown, you've got her totally lit up right now. So I'm gonna let her have the floor. She's saying, so interesting that branding is how others perceive, and self-awareness is being able to see how you are being. I mean, it's really much more deeper than following the steps and getting a logo, right?
It's by the way, true. I get so many people that come to me because they were like, okay, I'm going to pick my fonts and my colors because I like them and it's pretty. Yeah. But it doesn't do the job. You really need the foundational pieces.
Amazing. And by the way, my logo is, and my hair, is it still good to go for 2020, or is that a fad that needs to be done?
I mean, you've built a brand, you know, like you said, you weren't aware the first year, but maybe you were like unconsciously competent. I mean, it just happens sometimes where you make it happen. Like, you have a very unique style, you have a very unique personality, and you embraced that and you went for it. So I think, like, so there's no reason to change that, because you are making your own trends, right?
Staying on the course for the Joy Revolution, baby. But I also wanted to throw this out there. Shelley Brown, I can totally relate from reiterating from my corporate persona to the real me. And she follows up with, love quirks, and the response to my quirks has been the best.
Yes.
Has been the best, right? And yes, 100%. She did correct me. Hillel was the first guitarist for Chili Peppers. Rest in peace, Hillel. But Frusciante was the best, is the best guitarist of all time there. Walter is tuning in from Canada. Platinum rule: what we think people want and need may not be what they want and need.
That's
right?
Oh my gosh, so smart, Walter. That's the other piece, is your brand story. So many people, again, they show up as the hero, like, I'm going to come and save my clients from their woes, whatever that may be. Yeah. You're not thinking about what their pain points are, how you're going to walk them through it. So the brand story is really a big piece of that foundation that you need to work through before the visual manifestation, again, because you want to know, yes, you can help them, but how do they want to be helped? What are those pain points? How can you take them through the journey? And, you know, what's the transformation they're going through? Like, we're not selling, I'm not selling a pretty brand and a logo. It's really a transformation that people go through the process. Same thing with you. You're not selling the coaching sessions. You're selling that transformation that people are going through those coaching sessions. And that messaging is a huge part of it too.
So from a master in her craft, tell me what the transformation is that you got clear on that now you can help your clients go through.
Oh, there's so much that I've realized, especially this past year with the people who've really shown up. I brand 6 people at a time, usually in a group, rather than just one-on-one, although I do one-on-one, because it allows people to go through that transformation in a safe environment with other entrepreneurs. And I found that's really where my sweet spot is, because yes, I'm showing up as the expert, but being vulnerable, as you're saying, in a safe space really allows them to share and get feedback from other people who are very similar, have maybe ideal clients. And so there's a lot of testing involved. So it's like a test market along with that. Mm-hmm. And through that transformation, they get so many ahas about what they're, like we said, like your golden shadow, as you call it, their differentiators, and really what their ideal clients want. And then the visual manifestation comes out of that, which I create, and it gives people so much more confidence to go about serving and really inviting people in rather than selling too. You know, they can show up. It just makes it a lot easier to show up online. They don't have to overthink it. They don't have to overdo it. And it just kind of flows, if that makes sense.
Tell me if I'm totally going off track here, or you've seen this with new entrepreneurs that they kind of will have this light bulb moment where it's like, oh, I know what this program is. I'm going to build it. It's amazing. And they come to you and it's like, I have this. And they haven't done one bit of market research. And it's very hard for them to like let go of the attachment to the name and all that. Is that something that you see coming up quite a bit?
Yes, actually, that's a really good point. It really is. And I actually am super honest with people at that point and usually tell them that they're not quite ready to dive in and invest in a brand yet because they need to like maybe do a beta test first and make sure that it's validated, make sure that people want to pay for that. And it's like you get excited. I understand. I have new ideas every day that I want to do, but you have to really figure that out first and then invest. But typically there's 3 different types of entrepreneurs that I found. And the newbies, they haven't validated it, but there's also a lot of people who don't have a brand yet, but they're simply been behind the scenes. So it doesn't always mean that you're not ready to invest just because you haven't, ran a specific course or something. If you've already been doing it and you just haven't gone full force, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And then I can also see issues, not issues, but challenges coming as brands grow out of one-person brands, right? You know, for example, the Joy Revolution is now a team of 4. And so what would that look like with this damn face being the logo? What is that going to look like at the end of 2030, right? And so I can definitely see some areas of growth and areas where I need to unattach from. I'm excited I get to use the logo one more year, but it may be time to put next year at this time, it might be time to put a thing in it. I almost said a bullet in it, but I didn't want to be too wild there. David Bowie would not approve of that. Shelly is saying, I made that mistake already. In terms of money, the first iteration is rarely the one. Yep. You feeling that?
Yeah, and what you just said, Mark, too, is really important because there is an evolution to brands. And so I typically most entrepreneurs, unless you plan on selling your business, I think it really is important to start with a personal brand because you can evolve and grow under that. Then, if you bring on a team and other things, it will grow with you. So my client Selena Soo is a great example. Selena still has her personal brand, but then she has Impacting Millions, which has a brand of its own. And so, if she wants to build on additional things underneath that, or completely say in 5 years, she's like, that's done. Or Marie Forleo with B School, and she's like, B School's kind of lived its life. 1 billion people have gone through it. I'm done with it. I want to move on to something else. She very much still has her personal brand. So you could still keep the Mark Codone brand, but then you're just evolving. And what was once just an offering now turns into its own entity.
That makes a lot of sense, especially with if you go back and watch the episode where Tiff was talking about legacy brands, right? And I think that's the beginning of the discussion on legacy brand. If you guys want to go back, I believe it's episode 137. I got them all up here.
Nice.
It's episode 137, and essentially, if I still remember, legacy brand is your personal brand that shows up no matter where you are. This is the consistent Tiffany, whether she's doing a marketing program or she's doing Taco Tuesday on a Wednesday or she's at her kids' gymnastics practice. It's sort of that essence of Tiffany that shows up, and that's important to identify. And I think that's important to run with in the next decade, knowing your legacy brand, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's my trademarked way of doing branding is the legacy brand. And really, going back to the beginning of the interview, when you said it's all about visioning, that's really what it is too, is how you're always showing up, but then also, showing what's the ultimate destination. Ultimate destination that you want to be, say 5-10 years from now, reverse engineering that and creating the brand that you can grow into and evolve into, so you're not constantly changing it. And that's really the goal. And then, like you said, you can show up as that essence along the journey.
That's absolutely, that's so in line with hope theory, because hope theory is the development of one meta goal, and it's yes or no, that you achieve the meta goal, but all other goals that you make subsequent after you make that meta goal are steps in accordance with reaching the meta goal, right? It's like planning out the 90-day year, and then you have 2-week sprints in those 90-day years, right? So let's talk now about the next decade. Shelly, I'm just going to put this on there. That's why I'm naked.
Hey.
So in the next year, in the next decade, what are we looking at in terms of what the future of branding is? Yes!
This is when I get really excited. So I
was hoping you'd do that when you found out Frashante was back, but no. Now she's excited.
No, that's cool. I do love, I'll listen to some Under the Bridge later, but I'm not going to I don't get that excited. Okay. No, this is what excites me. So I just helped co-found a virtual reality lab at the college that I teach at. And this is what's really gets me going, because I don't talk about it a ton because it's kind of ahead of its time. But I worked with a startup that has an amazing business doing virtual and augmented reality, and I really got into it. And this is really where we're heading. And so my vision is to be the go-to person to help entrepreneurs that's not even in our minds yet of where we're heading. So first it's going to start off with animated logos, adaptive logos. So if you check out some of my work, I do a lot with movement, right? So we all know video is king. Now it's really turning into animated GIFs and movement, surprise and delight, things like that. In the next 5 to 10 years, though, we're really going to be stepping into virtual reality, augmented reality. So imagine my phone here. In the morning when I'm drinking coffee, a little hologram of Tony Robbins can show up, or whoever, and he'll be talking to us in that effect. And it sounds way out there, but it's what all of the big companies, Apple, Facebook, all of them are working towards. And also, instead of this, Mark, we'll be having events instead of live events. Are always going to be the best, skin, real contact. But you can host an event and have people show up at your events by selling. You can double your ticket sales by selling virtual reality, tickets, and people can go there. So incorporating that into branding. So this next year, I'm really excited because I'm going to start doing all my videos in 360. Maybe not all of them, but a lot of them, just to really start momentum in that direction. So that's where we're headed. That's what I get really excited about.
Well, you know what? It's something that when I was leaving higher education, and I was beginning to also have these conversations on the side with different companies, about talking about happiness and stuff. And the big thing that they were focusing on was the augmented reality. And I think the first thing that we saw was it coming out in game form with Pokemon Go.
Yes.
Right. You'd look through the screen, and then the next thing you know, there's something there. But also think about lead generation and the way we can gamify certain things, have these amazing ways to improve the community, map things out, and we have these spontaneous get-togethers, and everyone's kind of looking through 3D and stuff like that. I think it's amazing with what we can do. And what are you seeing in terms of so that's big company. What about for like smaller companies?
Right.
Will we have the ability to access things like that, or will that be something that's like, well, you gotta be kind of have the Tony Robbins budget to do this,
Right.
you
It'll
know?
definitely start that way, I mean, with a budget, but there are little things that we can do as far as getting a 360 camera, which is, handheld. It's a couple $100s. And when you're like, people could look around in your space or while you're traveling, do that. And it definitely will evolve because like when I was working in corporate, like BP Gas, a lot of the big companies, I was already doing that. Walmart already has over all of their employees go through virtual reality training. Like, a lot of these big companies are doing that. So that will have a trickle down effect. It will, I'm sure, start with people with the budgets. But there's also like Google Cardboard and things like that that's much more accessible. And really, it's just a matter of when the tech hits. Because right now, the VR headsets were tethered at first.
Yeah.
Now they're separate. And then but they're still like this clunky piece of plastic, right? So once that becomes like the glass, just simple glasses,
Yeah.
then it's going to change everything. And same with augmented reality. Plus, that's why I helped co-found the Virtual Reality Lab, is we need the bodies and the people and the minds to be able to produce all of the content once it goes into that direction.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it's going to take time, but it's just like when, we went from our other phones to these. Look at how fast that went. Mm-hmm. As soon as the tech is there, then it's going to hit and take off. So I feel like my job is to help be one step ahead to help people through the progression.
Yeah, so this doesn't sound like a fad. This actually sounds like a paradigm shift that's coming up with
the
new
it's a
technology.
Trend to follow, but yeah, it is going to be a shift for sure.
And I mean, when you're using things like the cell phone, that was a paradigm shift when the iPhone was introduced. Phone companies had to change the way that they operated because of it. Mm-hmm. They had to change like bandwidth and stuff like that. And I think it was only AT&T at the time, or Sprint, that actually could accommodate the power of what the iPhone did. The iPhone changed the way those companies worked. And I think this technology you're saying is going to change the way that we all view both branding, marketing, and the way that we interact with people. Shelly's got another question. She's on fire like usual.
Hey,
she's totally naked, and she admits it. It's not a you'll see in previous episodes. The only thing that concerns me as an entrepreneur is the accelerating costs of marketing oneself. Yes, I know the money will come. However, some of us really don't have the initial funds. What do you do there? Will some of the old tried and true methods last the paradigm shift?
Yeah,
will they be around after Revelation?
I think it's actually a really, really good question, Shelly, because if you think about it, we are having this paradigm shift into even more technology, which also I must add that my whole goal too is to keep it used for good. Everything can have positive and the negative. So very much we need to make sure we hold people accountable and use it for good. But it also, the other trend is kind of going backwards. So to old school, right? So like we're seeing a lot of Facebook ads. The cost is going up. It's not really like ads. People are just sick of them. They're used to them. People are getting kind of jaded from people just clicking on ads, buying a course. I just wrote a post on this yesterday, and people are like, I'm done with that. So like the true human connection, yes, technology is moving forward. That's going to give us more possibilities for the connection, but just showing up in organic marketing is really huge too. And being of service, like the old school referral marketing, I don't think that, and this is personal, like opinion, obviously, but having only Facebook ads in a funnel it's not going to get it because there's so many people out there doing it. So you're actually at an advantage if you have a smaller audience, in my mind, which is why like I have a small boutique business. I used to think, I want to scale into this huge company. I was like, no, actually I like it this way because I can really focus and serve my customers. So like your customer experience, your customer journey, like if you serve people well, that's going to give you a reputation for that. And that's part of your brand. Also
so word of mouth will never go away.
No. And personalization, like coming in and giving people personal touches that aren't happening a lot in higher level businesses. And then also social conscious. So like if you're showing that you're having a social conscious, diversity, inclusion, like Tom's Shoes of the world's one for one, all of that type of thing, even as an entrepreneur, I think that's going to set you a step ahead. And those are things that don't necessarily cost money. It's just the way you're doing business.
It's the way that you operate. Yeah. There was a study that was done on a Singaporean prison system, right? Mm-hmm. That it was actually a flourishing system with flourishing individuals in it, and they wanted to know why it was going so well. And the big part of it, there were 5 parts, but one of the big 5 parts was process matters so much in the way that you treat people, and also a high amount of trust. This is not an age in which people trust each other right now. And so what I'm looking forward to is this technology being used to build trust, to get oxytocin rushes, like the same rushes we would get if we were in person seeing each other, right? It's going to be I can see the pendulum coming full circle. This was kind of like the decade of loneliness, right? Even though we had the best technology ever.
Exactly.
I feel like we're at the precipice right now where everyone is acknowledging, yes, we're all the loneliness generation. Let's collectively use this to reconnect. And we don't have to throw everything out, but connection needs to be there.
Yeah.
Shelly wants us to know that this middle-aged chick just threw out her answering machine the other day from the 1980s. You never know, Shelly. That thing might be back at the end of the decade.
You never know. A lot of people are going opposite, so...
I'm going analog for 2020. Shelly, again, love this socially conscious business. I haven't even thought of this as an individual, but why not, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, Tiffany, thanks for lighting us up on that. Now we're talking about staying afloat in the upcoming tech evolution. Right. Mm-hmm. And what does this mean to stay afloat? Because I think in general, change can kind of scare people. Oh man, I finally got the Joy Revolution to a certain state. I'm pulling on staff. We're executing on these things. Income is predictable. Oh my gosh! And now there's a paradigm shift. Like how do we look at sort of this idea of staying afloat through it, and then thriving through it?
Thriving through it. So for me, I don't know exactly when it's coming, exactly when it's hit, but I decided to start talking about it now because it does light me up so much, and I had not been talking about it. And so some of my mentors were like, that's, again, not seeing the label inside the bottle. They're like, that's what makes you unique. Nobody else is talking about this. And I was like, oh yeah, I like talking about it in secret. So I really started talking out about it. But the truth is, we don't know when that. Virtual reality has been around since the 80s, right? It's really taken an evolution. So it is a matter of time when it really gets traction, and augmented reality as well, and it's almost there. So I think just being conscious of it, first of all, and understanding that it is coming and how you can do it, but it's not like going to be an overnight switch. So I think being conscious of it and just knowing that it's not scary and doing what you can to prepare, start even just using, if you're super analog, start getting on, Facebook Lives and start doing things that you haven't done yet, just preparing that's going to a whole another level,
Right. This technology is going to be seeping into everything that we do, where we probably will have at the end of the decade some sort of virtual room where we'll either play games or we can interact with people, and they'll be walking around their own virtual room as well. So it's not just in branding, but the shift is going to affect everything, right? And I know that you call it like the fifth dimension, and talk more about this fifth dimension.
Yeah, well, I guess I haven't coined that term
Yeah.
necessarily, but others have. And so basically, it is, you can go meet. Like right now, we could go and put our headsets on and go meet on like a fake, like in the moon. When I was with a startup company, we tested out a lot of different meeting rooms. Like I said, for BP Gas, they had this whole training system for people out on the ships out at seas. And so they needed to train for that. It's great so there's, again, a lot of places already doing that. So it's really being in a space that you aren't physically in. So again, that's the only concern with some people is that people just sit on their couches and, come in. But I think it really allows a more diverse, intentional way to interact with each other, because like you said, staring at screens is really hurting. I have an 18-year-old and I have a 5-year-old, and they react very different. The 18-year-old, my bonus daughter, she's not actually mine, but is in that arena of constantly on the screens, and we've been working with that, where the 5-year-old isn't, and you just see such a different in their joy capacity,
Right.
and
Right.
so what would it look like to have your masterminds, but you're actually feeling like you're there? Because as entrepreneurs too, we are so spread out and diverse. So it's a combination of, get in person when you can, absolutely. But if you can get together in that fifth dimension, it's not just staring at this 2D screen. It's really being in that 3D element, shifting from the 2D to the 3D.
Right. And I mean, that screen time is affecting everybody nowadays. I mean, it's affecting people down to the sleep that they get, right? So this is why I wear these babies starting at 3 o'clock every day now, and so it is really interesting how technology is moving. And I would also say that consciousness in general is moving towards a fifth dimension, right?
Totally.
And so people are talking about sort of how we are already kind of living in an illusionary world, that is about to shift to a fifth dimension anyways, with or without technology, and
Right.
so, not to get too far down the rabbit hole, like my team always makes fun of me for doing, but like, if you think, or you're one of the folks who believe that the way that you see the world starts with your feelings about yourself, if you see yourself as jaded and a victim, then you see the world as one that's totally like causing hell to you, right?
Absolutely.
And even in marketing and branding, they talk about the neuroscience of it. It's the reticular activating system that's doing that. But as we're learning more about sort of our conscious projections and how we're consciously creating things, that's already a fifth dimension aspect of things. So like that
Absolutely.
wave is coming with or without these clunky headsets for some people, right?
Right.
So it's really interesting that that technology is following suit with it. Yeah, Shelley was viscerally sick yesterday from staring at the screen. That's what happens when you watch 198 episodes of the Golden Mike Live. But
You
we will
binge
turn it
watching.
around by the 200th episode. I'm gonna be like Tupac hologram for the 200th episode, right? Paula, who's a coach, and with more and more people working remotely, how to maximize the social aspect in all possible ways is so important. I
Absolutely.
absolutely believe that,
Yeah, and I have clients, global clients, my last group I had a client in in Paris. I've had clients everywhere, basically, Bali. And it's so true. Like, I feel very disconnected because we are just communicating on Zoom in this 3D landscape. So if we could actually, have the tangible feeling of somewhat sitting in a conference room, sitting on the beach together,
Oh my God.
um, and having our mastermind sessions, like how cool would that be compared to just in our offices and Zoom? And obviously we still are here, but just to have our brains jump into another place for a moment and have that. And they're already doing it in psychology. I'm sure you're aware of this, Mark, to have people get over their fears and things like that. Like, it
Yep.
can very much be used for positive things.
Absolutely. When it comes to straight up ecology and productivity, there have been so many studies, like even just like having windows, like changes productivity, And so to be at a place that feels unfettered and free, like being on the beach in Bali, right, would probably have a very similar reaction where the team is not feeling so much fight or flight to get stuff done, or there's maybe some sort of pissing contests that are having ego pissing contests to be the right one, and everybody's on the beach together like having a good time. That does change. Those settings do change the way we interact with folks, and also at the same time, the brain doesn't know the difference.
Right.
That's the scary thing. Is that it could be scary, but like that's the wild thing is the brain doesn't know whether or not you're on a beach. Like just in the same way that if I have you think about a lemon right now and bite into the lemon, you're gonna get like water, saliva start building up, right?
Yeah.
You got people talking left and right. While I'm totally jelly that Tiffany has been on the golden mic as many times as she has, I can see why. But I want to surpass her ass. Okay, so we've got a goal.
Yay.
We've got a goal. Shelly, we'll have you back as a two-timer. Right now, Tiffany gets the denim jacket. You don't know that was sent by the golden mic. She gets a denim jacket for 5 times on the show. That's the prize, right? Talk a little more about putting it all together now, Tiffany. Putting it all together. We've got things coming up. We've got things leaving behind. We're at 2020, which is like totally a metaphor for vision, right? You know what I mean? So we're at 2020. It's a year of where we're going to be reflecting every time you start a new decade. Put it all together for us. What is this looking like?
Yeah. So, we kind of did go off on a tangent, and I am a visionary. I look really far in advance. So, thank you for doing that, because we don't want to leave people like, what am I supposed to do? Yeah. So that's just really, like I said, just being conscious about it, just being aware that we're going to be doing that. Don't be afraid of it, and just be ready and adaptive, I guess, is the main thing. So really the good thing is the foundational pieces, just like, most of our human experience is like foundational. So that's not going to change. And same thing with branding. Good branding, there's been books written about it, and it's very much like the hero's journey, how to speak to your ideal clients, getting that foundation set, and really in this day and age, showing up as your genuine self. So that doesn't change. You can always do that. This other stuff is really icing on the cake to really set you apart, have you be seen as a leader in your space. But really to just stick with that, and then also not be afraid to just push the envelope a little bit with how you're showing up online. So, don't use stock photography. Use, do your branded photo shoots. Don't just stand against a brick wall. Like, have fun with it. Show your personality. When you can, incorporate video whenever you can. Look into adaptive and animated logos. So I mentioned the animated ones earlier. I have Facebook Lives on this if you want more details, but adaptive logos as well. So you'll see a lot of the big companies where their logo with the tagline is this big and it's on their website. But once you get into mobile, it needs to just be the icon. So how, instead of just one logo that you're using anywhere, what's adaptive, or what's your branded set of logos?
Absolutely.
It doesn't make sense to just have one that you're tossing out there, because you're showing up in all these different mediums. Like on Instagram, a lot of times I'll do stamps for people because that needs to go over. So just really being adaptive in general is where we're heading in branding.
So cool. So it's not like some of the core concepts won't be antiquated, but the paradigm shift is going to come around the modalities that are coming up.
Exactly.
And the ways that we use the modalities sound like they're going to offer up this new plethora of ways to interact. In an age where probably this past decade was the rise of the mind, the rise of the entrepreneur, the solopreneur, but also like we're all doing it from our houses, our bed. Like we're unless you want to rent out a WeWork, it really comes from our, that's overhead I don't want to pay for. It comes from our houses now, and it really looks like we're gonna have a new ability to connect with each other. I absolutely love it. The Facebook group, let's talk about it now. Since you just mentioned it, we can get a lot of good stuff, and I'm so glad that I was part of the launch of your Facebook group because there's so many good nuggets in that group. Where can we go to find that group?
Yeah, so it's called Ignite Your Brand, and actually, I may be retiring at some point in 2020, Mark. But
Okay.
people can still join. There's a ton of content there.
Okay.
Also, I'm starting to do a lot more on my Facebook page now
Okay.
too. So I have weekly videos that come out where I talk about like trends like this and show actual visual examples. Because that always is helpful for people when you're typically thinking of the brand in a visual sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ignite Your Brand is the group. Otherwise, just look up Tiffany Neuman and you can find me on Facebook.
Amazing. Amazing. If Facebook's still around 10 years from now.
That is a good point. That is a good point. And we will adapt.
It may be Faceland, right? You've done this a couple times, my friend. It's been awesome to get to know you through the shows and seeing you in person the few times we've seen each other in person. You were totally dressed like David Bowie when I saw you last time in person. There's a golden mic that's coming down right now, Newman, and it's coming to rest in front of you. And this golden mic translates into every language all across the multiverse now. All sentient beings can hear it. Even Hillel will hear it when you say your message. Some people aren't ready to hear what you're about to say. Others have been searching for what you're about to say to them. So Tiffany Neuman, your golden mic is live now.
I did not rehearse this. Okay, so I'll just be honest. So I think just keep, the foundation is there. You are who you are. So brand by being, brand really, it's an evolution. Bring in the social conscious and really think about your customer journey. And that's really what you need to build that solid foundation and then adapt as you move forward.
Would you hold that golden mic out? Would you hold that golden mic out? Because Golden Mic 198 is coming to a close, and we're actually doing a second golden mic tonight at 6 p.m. talking about mature masculinity. So we're going to pass the golden mic over to Andres Valencia. But before we do, I've got a huge budget for the show now, as everyone can see. I want you to take your golden mic, Tiffany, and smash that golden mic, Newman. Smash that golden mic. And now dance on it. What I got, you got to give it to your mama. No, you get dancing to the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Yep. We'll see you tonight at 6 p.m. to talk about not manly masculinity, mature masculinity with Andres Valencia. But more importantly, Tiffany, you and your family, holiday wishes for the next few weeks and for the next decade. I can't wait to grow with you on this journey. And it's up to you to hold this pole position for the next few golden mics. Shelly's coming after you. So on behalf of Tiffany Neuman, I'm Mark Cordone, and we've got one question for you, and it's this. If you're feeling good and you're living your life in full purpose, what is your responsibility to change history for the better? Have a good one. Thank you, Tiffany. See ya. You crushed it again.